The expectation of really all people now is that they're going to know what happened the instant it happens. And, you know, that's great when the information is accurate. I think the downside of just so many stories circulating at any given microsecond is that people feel somewhat overwhelmed by news, and it's hard to focus your attention on what stories are most important when they're exploding at you. Usually now reporters break their stories on Twitter before they've even written a finished story. First, that nuance and perspective and analysis can be completely lost in that first quick and dirty version. But worse, there can be big factual mistakes, which, has contributed to, the very low trust numbers that all news media companies have right now, which is very distressing to me, because it opens the door for President Trump to rant about fake news and call journalists the enemies of the people when they're like the heroes of the people, because they risk their lives to dig out the information that is vital for people to know. When I started as a reporter in the Stone Age, of course, the newsroom was, I always thought it would be like Jimmy Olsen and Superman, that, you'd hear typewriters clacking and people shouting. And I was surprised at how quiet, at least the Wall Street Journal's newsroom in Washington was. And there was no internet at that point. And the rhythm of the day was usually in the morning and through the afternoon. You were out reporting. You were finding sources, going to hearings, meeting secretly with people who might give you documents. And really, you only got around to writing your story about 6 p.m. And the deadline, you could set your watch by it every night, was around 9, because the rhythm of newspapering was completely governed by when the presses rolled. And they only rolled once a day unless the earth blew up and then you stopped the presses and replayed it. But, it was a slow pace. And the Journal, when I joined up, didn't even have a weekend paper. So Friday was really an easy day because the next paper was Monday. And then all changed in the late 1990s with the advent of the internet. And the Wall Street Journal was one of the first newspapers to create an online version of itself. And that meant that the printing presses didn't figure into like when your story went up. Although in the early years it was ridiculous, it was true at the Times too. We maintained that same schedule of just doing one final story a day at night and then having it posted on the web for years. But the advent of social media completely changed that. And what had become a much faster pace where, at the Times we were posting early versions of any important story on nytimes.com. And with social media, it was the instantaneous report. Like, get something up on social media to begin attracting the eyeballs before you even have a story up on the website. That began to actually scare me when I became Washington bureau chief of the Times. And the Supreme Court had just, it was nighttime, decided Bush v. Gore, decided what would happen next, if anything, and who would be president. And the instant TV analysis on CNN and other cable outlets was wrong. And Linda Greenhouse, who was the Times' totally experienced, brilliant Supreme Court reporter, rushed back to the office with, she had read the decision in a cab, and the first thing she said to us when she arrived was, turn off the TVs, because she knew they were blathering idiocy. And then she told us it was over. Bush won. And that night so stuck in my mind. And roll the cameras forward to the decision on Obamacare when I was executive editor. I wasn't, calling the Washington Bureau to say, have that story first. The second there's a decision, I want it up. I was worried about the opposite. I was worried about a repeat of that Bush v. Gore night. And my instructions were, until the Supreme Court reporter and the Washington bureau chief call me and say they're sure, and it was, you remember, a close decision, we are not putting anything up. And if quite a bit of time goes by, we'll clue in readers that we're reporting the story for them, but we're not going to do a quick draw McGraw.